My name is Elena Vance. I am 34 years old, and I build structures designed to withstand earthquakes, floods, and time. I know how to calculate load-bearing walls. I know how to spot a crack in the foundation before it brings the whole house down. But nothing in my architecture degree prepared me for the weight of the manila envelope my father placed on my coffee table last Tuesday. It had been 8 years since they last walked through my front door. 8 years of silence. 8 years of missed birthdays, ignored holidays, and radio static where a mother's voice used to be. And then, suddenly, the doorbell rang. Robert stood there in his beige cardigan, looking older, thinner. Beside him, Susan clutched her purse like a shield. They didn't hug me. They didn't ask how I was. Robert simply held out the envelope. "We need to discuss your grandfather's estate," he said, his voice steady, practiced. "And your debt to us." I didn't gasp. I didn't cry. I didn't slam the door. I looked at the envelope. Then I looked at them. "Come in," I said calmly. "But leave the envelope on the table. I'll get my files." They exchanged a glance. Confusion flickered in Susan's eyes. They expected tears. They expected pleading. They expected the daughter who used to beg for their approval. They didn't expect the woman who had spent the last decade building a fortress around her life. They brought a demand letter. I brought 10 years of bank statements. One of them was prepared for a conversation. The other was prepared for a war. Have you ever had family show up only when they needed something? Drop a comment below. I want to know who else keeps receipts. Because today, I'm going to show you why documentation isn't cold. It's survival. To understand why they were standing in my living room, you have to go back 10 years. To the summer I graduated with my master's in architecture. I had just fallen in love with David, a structural engineer from a different cultural background. My parents, Robert and Susan, were pillars of our small town's conservative community. Status mattered. Appearance mattered. Conformity mattered. When I told them I was marrying David, the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Robert didn't yell. He just adjusted his cufflinks and said, "If you choose him, you choose exile. We cannot support a union that dilutes our legacy." I chose David. I chose love. And just like that, I was erased. No wedding invitation sent. No phone calls. No Christmas cards. For 2 years, I was a ghost in my own family history. Then, the crisis hit. David and I were trying to buy our first condo. We had the down payment saved, but the market spiked. We were short by $20,000. We were desperate. That's when Robert called. Not to apologize. Not to reconnect. But to offer a loan. $20,000, he said. Consider it an investment in the family name. You'll sign this promissory note. Standard terms. 5% interest. Repayable over 5 years. I was so relieved. I thought it was a bridge. I thought it was a chance to heal. I signed the paper. I transferred the money. And for 5 years, I paid them back. Every month. On time. With interest. I kept every canceled check. Every bank confirmation. Every email receipt. I filed them away, not out of suspicion, but out of habit. Architects document everything. Loads, stresses, timelines. I treated my life like a blueprint. Precise. Measured. Accountable. When the final payment cleared, I sent Robert an email, loan paid in full. Thank you for the help during that difficult time. He replied with one word, received. No congratulations. No we miss you. Just received. After that, the silence returned. Heavier this time. Because now, I wasn't just the daughter who disobeyed. I was the daughter who owed them nothing. And for people like Robert and Susan, debt is the only leash they know how to hold. When the leash snaps, they don't mourn the connection. They look for a new hook. They didn't invest in me. They invested in control. And when I broke the contract of submission, they wrote off the asset. Until the asset became valuable again, I learned then that love, in their house, was conditional. It was a transaction. And if you couldn't pay with obedience, you had to pay with money. But I had already paid. And I had the receipts to prove it. Fast forward to last month. My firm, Vance Structures, closed its Series B funding round. We were featured in Forbes and Architectural Digest. My net worth, tied up in equity and real estate holdings, hit $12 million. I didn't post about it. I didn't brag. I just went back to work. But in a town of 5,000 people, news travels faster than light. 3 days after the article published, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Saw the news. Proud of you. Let's talk soon. It was Robert. I didn't reply. I archived the message. I knew better than to engage with a ghost who only appears when the sun shines on his wallet. 2 days later, the doorbell rang. And there they were. Robert and Susan. Unannounced. Uninvited, Robert sat on my sofa, the same beige leather one he had refused to sit on 8 years ago because it was too modern. He slid the manila envelope across the glass coffee table. The sound of paper on glass was sharp in the quiet room. We've drafted a family equity agreement, he said, tapping the paper with a manicured finger. It formalizes our contribution to your success. The $20,000 we lent you wasn't just a loan, Elena. It was seed capital. In exchange, we're entitled to 3% of your current holdings. Approximately $360,000. I picked up the envelope. Inside was a document dated 10 years ago. It looked like the promissory note I had signed. But as I scanned it, I saw the difference. A handwritten clause at the bottom, squeezed into the margin. In addition to principal and interest, lender retains 3% equity in borrower's future professional earnings and assets. My signature was at the bottom. But the handwriting of the clause? It wasn't mine. The loops were tighter. The ink color was slightly darker, a different pen entirely. It was clumsy. Amateurish. Susan leaned forward, her voice sweet, poisonous. We're family, Elena. We helped you start. We deserve a share of the harvest. I looked at them. Really looked at them. I saw the greed behind Robert's eyes. I saw the entitlement in Susan's posture. They weren't here to reconnect. They were here to collect, harvest? You weren't there for the planting. You weren't there for the drought. You're here for the fruit. I didn't tear it up. I didn't scream. I smiled. A polite, professional smile. The kind I give clients when their blueprints are fundamentally flawed. Let me review this, I said. There seem to be some discrepancies. Can we meet at my office tomorrow? I'll bring my records. Robert nodded, confident. He thought I was naive. He thought I was emotional. He didn't know I was architectural. I build structures that hold. Theirs was built on sand. And I was about to wash it away. That night, I didn't sleep. I worked. I opened my secure cloud drive. Folder, financial_archives_2014-2024. I pulled up the scan of the original promissory note. There was no equity clause. Just the principal, the interest rate, and the repayment schedule. Clean. Simple. Legal. Next, I downloaded 10 years of bank statements. I highlighted every transfer to Robert's account in yellow. 24 payments. Principal plus interest. Total repaid, $22,500. The math was undeniable. The debt was zero. Then, I called Grace. Grace is my attorney. She's sharp, quiet, and hates drama almost as much as I do. Grace, I said. I have a forged document and a harassment issue. I want a cease and desist. And I want to record our next meeting. Grace paused. I could hear the shift in her tone from lawyer to friend. Are you sure? Once you go legal, there's no going back. You burn the bridge. I'm sure, I said. They think this is a family dispute. I need them to realize it's fraud. Grace advised me to let them dig their hole deeper. Get them to admit the terms in writing or on tape. Make them commit to the lie before you reveal the truth. Let them hang themselves with their own rope. So, I drafted a text to Robert. I've reviewed the agreement. There are discrepancies regarding the original terms. Can we meet at my office tomorrow at 10 a.m.? I'll bring my records to clarify. He replied instantly, see you then. Bring your checkbook. I stared at the screen. Bring your checkbook. They weren't even pretending anymore. This wasn't about justice. It wasn't about legacy. It was about extraction. Pure and simple, I wasn't building a case for revenge. I was building a firewall. And firewalls don't burn. They just block. I printed everything. The original note. The bank statements. A forensic handwriting analysis report I'd commissioned quietly that morning, confirming the clause was added later with a different pen. I placed them in a sleek, black binder. Not navy blue. Black. Because this wasn't just history. It was evidence. And evidence doesn't negotiate. It just exists. My office is on the 4th floor of a glass building downtown. Floor-to-ceiling windows. White walls. Minimalist furniture. It's a space designed for clarity. For truth, Robert and Susan arrived at 9:55 a.m. They looked out of place among the steel and glass. Robert wore his best suit, the one he saved for funerals and weddings. Susan carried her purse tightly against her chest, like a shield. I greeted them politely. Please, sit. Grace sat beside me. On the table between us was a small digital recorder. I tapped it. The red light blinked on. This meeting is being recorded for legal purposes, I stated clearly. Do you consent? Robert hesitated. Susan looked nervous, glancing at the door. But Robert's ego got the better of him. He smirked. Fine, he said. We have nothing to hide. Good, Robert slid the forged agreement across the table. Sign the amendment, Elena. Acknowledge the equity clause. Transfer the funds. And we can put this behind us. We can be a family again. I didn't touch the paper. Instead, I opened my black binder. The sound of the rings clicking open was loud in the silent room. Before we discuss amendments, I said, my voice level, let's discuss the original contract. I pulled out the first document. The original promissory note. This is what I signed. Dated June 12, 2014. No equity clause. No mention of future earnings. Robert frowned. That's not the full agreement. It is, I said. I pulled out the second document. The bank statements, highlighted in yellow. These are the 24 payments I made. Totaling $22,500. The loan was paid in full in 2019. Here is your email confirming receipt. Susan shifted in her seat. Her eyes darted between the papers. Elena, don't be difficult. We're talking about family. I'm talking about facts, I said. I pulled out the third document. The forensic report. And this is a handwriting analysis. The equity clause was added in blue ink that doesn't match the rest of the document. The signature is mine, but the clause is not. This is forgery, Robert. And attempting to enforce a forged document is fraud. The room went silent. The air conditioner hummed. The only sound was the blood rushing in Robert's ears. His face turned pale. Then red. You're threatening your own father? No, I said. I'm correcting the record. You didn't come for connection. You came for collection. And I don't do business with thieves. Susan started to cry. Fake, theatrical sobs. The kind she used to get her way when I was a child. How can you say that? We raised you. We gave you everything. You gave me a loan, I corrected, my voice steady. Which I repaid. You didn't give me love. You withheld it as punishment. And now you're trying to monetize that withholding. I stood up. Grace remained seated, calm, watching. Grace will send you a cease and desist order. If you contact me, David, or our children again, we will press charges for fraud and harassment. Do you understand? Robert stood up, shaking. His hands were fists. You'll regret this. We're your blood. Blood doesn't pay the bills, I said. And it doesn't buy respect. Goodbye, Robert. Goodbye, Susan. I walked them to the elevator. I didn't look back. I didn't feel sad. I felt light. Like a load-bearing wall had finally been removed, and the structure hadn't collapsed. It had soared, the fallout was quiet. Predictable, Robert and Susan tried to smear me in our hometown. They told church friends I was greedy. That I had abandoned my parents for money. They posted vague, passive-aggressive statuses on Facebook about ungrateful children and the pain of estrangement, but I didn't engage. I didn't defend myself. I didn't post counter-arguments. Silence is the loudest response to noise. Instead, Grace issued a single public statement on my behalf. All financial obligations between Ms. Vance and her parents were satisfied in 2019. Any claims to the contrary are baseless and supported by forged documentation. Further harassment will result in legal action. The town knew Robert. They knew his reputation for cutting corners. They knew Susan's gossip. When they saw the proof, the timeline, the repayment records, the forensic report, the narrative shifted. The sympathy moved from them to me. The whispers stopped, David stood by me. Every step. I'm proud of you, he told me one night, holding my hand. You protected our future. You protected our peace. I realized then that I wasn't losing my parents. I was losing my abusers. And the space they left wasn't empty. It was filled with safety. With trust. With the knowledge that my home was no longer a place where I had to defend my worth. Reputation is what people think of you. Character is what you do when no one is watching. I watched myself. And I stood firm. 6 months later, I received one last letter. From Robert. It wasn't an apology. It was a bill for legal fees he claimed I owed him for the stress. I shredded it. I didn't even open it fully. Some things aren't worth reading. Some doors, once closed, should stay locked. I used to think family meant obligation. I thought if I just paid enough, paid with money, paid with time, paid with silence, I could buy their love. I believed that endurance was the currency of belonging. Now I know better. Family means safety. If they don't provide safety, they aren't family. They're just history. And history is something you learn from, not something you live in. Documentation is self-respect. Boundaries are not walls built to keep people out. They are gates. And you hold the key. You don't owe anyone access to your life just because they share your DNA. You owe them kindness, yes. But you owe yourself protection. What's one debt you've been told you owe, but never actually did? Was it emotional? Financial? Time? Write it down. Tear it up. Keep it close. The rest will quietly follow you. Last week, I walked through the lobby of my newest building. It's a library. Quiet. Strong. Built to last. I ran my hand along the marble foundation stone. Built to last. The inscription read, I smiled. Just like me, the day I stopped paying for their approval was the day I finally afforded my own peace. What's one boundary you're ready to fund today?